Welcome to this week's 2 Men in the Middle. This is where 2 men in the middle of the country get together and talk about politics, current events, and other fun stuff. I'm Craig Huey.
I'm Brandon Koenig.
And I'm Jason Peterson.
We have a guest. Once again, we're bringing back all of the old-time favorites. We had Mike a couple of weeks ago. Jason, you should feel better. We only let Mike come on every 100 episodes. And I didn't have the heart to tell him. That was fan feedback to why we do that.
Well, I've loved listening to you guys the last few months. It was great to have you back. So happy to be here.
It's hard to be a listener of the podcast because you never know when we're just going to fade away for 3 or 4 months.
Well, that's all right. That's life. We get it. That's kind of about being in the Midwest.
Brandon, what's always the enemy of the amateur podcaster?
Well, personal life, right?
Real life.
Like, real life getting in the way, which, family stuff. And so, we've both had our share of that.
You mean this isn't your priority every week?
No.
Not our full-time jobs,
it is not. Yeah. You may be shocked by this, Jason, but nobody pays us to do this.
I can't tell looking around here.
I know. Well, the air conditioning's on today in the 2 Men in the Middle studio.
We're all still sweating.
Yeah, it gets pretty warm in here, but I'm just trying to kill time with anything somewhat pleasant before we have to actually talk about
politics, current events, and other depressing stuff.
This episode was planned to be an in-depth discussion on AI. Jason, you're a CTO. You've been a high-level tech guy for years, capable of communicating technical concepts. This was going to be like your mom's guide to AI. Practical things you could use with AI. That's not what's going to happen.
And then the debate happened. Brandon,
I'll start with you. We tried to organize this out a little bit into topics. This is just a therapy session. We'll start with you. Brandon, what do you need to get off your chest or get out into the ether that we need to discuss about that debate? What's your number one issue coming out of that thing?
That debate was over immediately as it began. I think this was one of the few times where, as soon as the president walked on the stage and immediately began speaking, my jaw dropped and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Something is wrong. He's more raspy than usual. His voice sounds worse than usual. He looks more ancient than usual. What is so frustrating with that debate is that this was a debate that the president requested. The format in terms of the muted mics, he requested everything. And all of that worked to his disadvantage, beside the fact that he was clearly not up to par. And this was, I think, you can argue about the optics of Biden over the last 4 years and when he has struggled in public engagements. But this was the most incoherent, the most bumbling we've seen him. And this was not only presented the most risk, but this had the greatest ramification, and that you had nearly 50 million Americans tuning in. And there was so much pressure to ensure that he performed and could show that he was up to the task to lead the free world. And he not only flopped, but did a great disservice, because at the same time that he was able to go toe-to-toe with Trump just unleashed a steady stream of lies, many of which went unchallenged directly.
And nobody's talking about today.
And that should be, if we had a different candidate who was able to go head-to-head with Trump, the discussion today would be about everything Trump said that was a lie, some of the more outrageous things, the risks that he presents to the country, and that would be the top of conversation. It's not. None of that is.
But let's talk about the debate format a little bit, because I thought the format worked really well. Yeah. I liked the mics cut off. I liked the no audience. And I liked that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, hey, they didn't bail anybody out. This is a debate. If Jason and I are debating and Jason tells a whopper of a lie, it is my responsibility to correct it. They didn't step in, and I think that's appropriate.
They did do a good job of following up, though, right? Because they had a topic,
a few times,
and if you didn't answer it, they'd try again a couple different times. Now, it didn't work, but they tried.
Because that's your prerogative in a debate. If you choose not to engage with the question, that's on you.
Yeah.
Did you think that the mechanics of the debate were
I thought
fine?
It was wonderful. And the split screen showing both at the same time, you could see the facial reactions or lack thereof on the other side. But obviously the muted mic worked, because there were times when both of them would keep talking and they were stopped from it. But back to emotions.
Talk on your mic, Jason.
Back to emotions.
Mike for the same
My
thing.
number one emotion ending that thing was anger. I'm so frustrated because the last 9 to 12 months we've been told over and over and over again there's no problem to see here. Biden's fine. He works more hours than anybody else. He's totally coherent in all the cabinet meetings. Joe Scarborough's up there. I've known him all my life. He's the best he's ever been. And I mean, you guys follow politics really closely. Maybe half of the audience of this podcast does as well. But when often do you actually see Biden speak without a teleprompter? I can't remember the last time.
I think this is what we were debating, that if you stick to CNN and MSNBC, you just don't see this. And Jason, Jason, you asked Brandon, when is the last time you've actually seen Biden in a press conference or where he has to think on his feet for an extended period of time? Really couldn't come up with it.
He hasn't held a press conference in months that I'm aware of. I mean, you'd probably have to go back to sometime last year. It's been that long. And most of his appearances so far this year have been scripted or teleprompter campaign appearances.
Yeah. Was it? I was listening to debate, so on purpose I didn't watch it.
Oh, really?
I didn't want to see the visuals. I wanted to hear it first, and then I wanted to look at it.
Did you hear that he practiced the walk?
No.
Apparently repeatedly practiced the walk to get on stage. So when you actually go
Just
back
being
and
able to
watch
get out
it,
without-
that was the best take right there.
And that was 7 days of prep work, too.
Yeah.
Just by sound alone, it was horrifying.
The first 10 minutes in particular.
Absolutely. It was terrible. And then when you match the visuals with the sound, it got no better. I don't think we need to relive all of the low moments of the debate, except to say that was, if Biden's expectation was to not make Jason mad and to make him feel better about that vote for Biden, can anybody come up with anywhere he met that mark? Was there anything that basically allowed you to say, okay, I'm still on board with this and I still feel comfortable voting for Biden?
Nothing.
He did get a little bit better during the second half.
He did.
And that's not saying a lot.
That's his drug cocktail. They did it in reverse this time, Brandon.
Start. There were elements of what he was trying to say that you could pick up and be like, I agree with that. I can see where he's going, but he couldn't articulate it.
No.
And to Brandon's point, Trump would say something, a perfect shot across the plate to go hit at, and Biden would just not even look at it.
It's like he didn't even recognize
Yeah.
it. He didn't even realize that was something that I can pick up in and put down.
Well, and a good example is like the Roe v. Wade question. He could have really gone after Trump, not only for the Dobbs decision, but Trump being all over the map since that in terms of where he is on abortion. But Biden's answer was not only incoherent. He started talking about trimesters. I don't know if you recall that, like first trimester, second trimester.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about there? And then this was the part that just boggled my mind. I don't know if you remember, he immediately started going into a story about an illegal immigrant who had killed a woman, and then Trump went to the funeral that had nothing to do with abortion. I'm like, what are you doing? And then he went back to abortion. I'm like, what are you doing? You are putting out the Republican talking point about a young American woman being killed by an illegal, which why would you put that out there? And it has nothing to do with the abortion question anyway. And then he immediately went back to abortion from that. And it just, again, the incoherence, because there were a handful of times during the debate where he would bring up a totally unrelated issue.
Medicare.
Right. Or he wants to beat Medicare. Remember that? Like, what? You want to beat Medicare? Like,
I mean, Trump is not the Trump of 2016, but he's still capable of throwing the zingers out and being entertaining in a debate, that's what the MAGA crowd is there for. Brandon, let's talk about the number of lies Trump has told. This is something that you were texting me about, me and Mike, and we were kind of going back and forth. I'm under the impression that the first million lies didn't do anything to him. The second million lies won't do anything to him. Why can't we get past Trump? Trump is a liar. We all know this. It's not going to impact him in any way. What is the strategy with dealing with Trump's lies moving forward that's way more effective than what we've been doing, which is just streaming and pointing liar, 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 and everybody's like, so you finally caught on.
Well, I would prefer not to have debates, and I've gone back and
That's
forth
one
on this,
point.
but I don't think we need these debates. But part of the problem is, like, you have to operate on the same playing field and the same level of reality between the candidates if you're going to have a debate. And normally they would be talking about their policy prescriptions. This is vastly different because not only do you have one incumbent, you have essentially two incumbents. And so, and in the case of Trump, it's a constant stream of lies, and we're not talking about like in just embellishments or exaggerations. We're talking about flat out lies. cases the other night where he took direct credit for policy achievements that Biden had done when it came to lowering insulin prices, when it came to the VA Act that Obama had passed that was not even Trump's achievement. And he took credit for those, or just making incredible claims that, he would end the war in Ukraine before he was inaugurated, just things like that. And saying that, the United States had paid more for the Ukraine war than all of the European partners, which is actually flat out false. We didn't pay anything for about 6 months due to the impasse in the House of Representatives. I mean, there are so many, you can't even keep up with just the litany of lies. There were some very serious ramifications to some of the things he said as well. He also said that there was no terrorism when he was president anywhere in the world during those 4 years. He also claimed that Iran stopped funding Hezbollah and Hamas when he was president, which of course is ridiculous. And he made the claim too that the Wall Street reporter Evan Gersovich, who's being held right now in Russia, that Putin would release Evan for him and would do that as a favor for Trump only, and that he would only be released if Trump won, which again, that should get a lot of attention. It won't because of Biden's issues, but that's a pretty scary thing out there, and that also jeopardizes Evan's release anytime between now and January, the fact that Trump would make that type of claim.
So you made a comment that aligns with Craig's question, though. If you said you don't like debates, you wish there wasn't a debate. If there wasn't, what is that? Because it's the format, the people? Like, what would you do instead? How would we learn that Biden is where he is, and how would we compare any other potential candidate?
I mean, I struggle with this because I feel like debates, other than the perception and the visual impact of, I feel like they have less and less relevance in today's age when so many Americans consume their information in their media silos. It's not like, everybody huddled around, the television living room. I mean, even yesterday's debate, I think people consumed it on their own time. They consumed bits and pieces of it. Those that are not watching in real time will get clips fed to them via their preferred media outlets or micro-targeted ads. So it's a very different just time that we're living in. And so I don't think they have the impact that they once had. But, I mean, if you're going to do something like that, I would prefer something like a town hall style where there's specific Americans that have specific questions that are predetermined and they get to ask those questions. That would be a little bit different. And they've done those types of debates in the past.
There's a couple things happening that it took me a really long time to realize. Number one, the MAGA movement is not 30% of the Republican Party. It's more like 60 to 65% of the Republican Party. Trump has actually grown the MAGA base within the Republican Party. The Republican Party is way, way more MAGA than we think it is.
And part of that is the Republican Party has also bled voters on the margins who are anti-Trump, who have become independent or unaffiliated and have left the party. And so the party has become more MAGA-fied over the last several years.
So 70% of the party, Jason, thinks 60 to 70% of what Trump said was true. That's the problem. The problem is you're sitting there watching this, getting more angry, more agitated of, my God, somebody check this guy. Come on, this is easy stuff. We need to. The people at home who Trump is going for ate that shit up hook, line, and sinker.
And that's where if the candidate were better to counter him, we'd be fine with the debate. Because this is the one case where everybody gets the same message, sees the same picture, has the same message. If you don't, it's Craig, you texted something about wait till the MAGA side chops up this clip from this and shares it on the TikTok and the YouTube clips and whatever.
Replay it over and over.
And it'll be completely taken out of context or not and just not countered. And either one's terrible.
Well, Brandon and I have talked about this a lot, and we've talked about this in the context of the DeSantis campaign. The memification of your campaign is a death sentence to you. And every campaign needs to hire a 23-year-old kid right out of college who at any point can shoot up a flare and shut the whole campaign down because it says, Ron, you're a chubby man in white boots in a denim shirt, soaking wet, walking in the rain. Guess what the internet's going to do with that image? My point here being is this is going to live on through clips, through Jack Posobiec, Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon. This will have a shelf life and be seen by hundreds of millions of people
for months,
millions of times for months. This will live in perpetuity. There's no way to scrub this out.
That 10 minutes alone they'll reuse over and over and over.
And I don't think we can overlook, I mean, Trump himself is incoherent. He is old. He has obvious mental deficiencies. He's out of touch with reality. But one of his strengths on the debate stage last night, even though he was very repetitive, he wasn't able to answer the questions directly. It was the same talking points over and over. He talks very fast, and he's lightning fast, and he delivers it very quickly. He's got vigor, and that came across. Biden was slow. He mumbled. It was when you're in a debate. When you have basically a time element involved and you're time restricted, like every second counts. And if you are slow to speak, slow to get your thoughts out, that you're going to be penalized for that, and you're not going to be able to keep up. And he just wasn't. And so it was one of those where it was an extreme loss of opportunity.
What's up with Biden's left eye? Nobody saw that before the stage? Dude, your left eye looks like it's drooping.
Yeah.
There were simple, basic cosmetic things that could have been done, that could have improved on the margins a little bit. It just seems like no attempt was made to put Biden in the best possible space he could.
Brandon, you worked in a congressional office. You know the responsibilities of staff. Where's his staff? Why'd they let him go on stage and follow this format they dictated, knowing that he was coming into it like that? He was not set up for success.
No, not at all. Well, and that it's unforgivable, number one. And number two, the fact that he had a cold, which is not something they can lean on for his entire conduct, but the fact that he had a cold and they even tested him for COVID, and yet they did put that out there to begin with so people would know. It was 50 minutes in that they let reporters know on background. Like, why would – that's incompetent.
Easy one dimension ahead of time.
Like, why would you do that?
We talk about the CEO syndrome all the time. Yeah. Jason, at your company, when's the last time in a meeting somebody looked at the CEO and said – Bob, that's about the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. And I don't know what direction we're going in, but you're absolutely wrong.
Never happens.
Never happens.
Hard truths.
The person who suffers from the CEO syndrome the most is the President of the United States. Who has the power to do that? That answer is nobody. Who has the relationship to do that? That's his wife.
Maybe Obama.
Maybe Clinton, Ron Klain. But the real question is, who has the power to affect that? And that is no one. That's what we're learning.
This group of people needs to put country over power because they so want to retain power. They're ignoring all the flaws and the problems that are going to come if this keeps going the way it's going.
So, Brandon, Jason and I debated this in the parking lot a little bit. I'm for throwing Biden off the ticket. If there's a logical way it can be done, if you can present to me who the person would be to replace, I would vote for that right now. The problem is, you don't have to get Biden off the ticket. You have to get Biden and Harris off the ticket. How does that happen?
There would have to be some type of deal struck to get Harris off the ticket, offering her something else.
Do you agree with me that if we kick off Joe and just give it to Kamala, that's what was the point of that?
You're not worse off than you are now. Maybe she can actually counter him during a debate.
By polling points, we're another 5 to 10 points down.
I don't know that I completely subscribe to that. She's not a great candidate, but I think just on par, like she would be better that she could go head-to-head in a debate. I mean, we've seen her debate. She did the VP debate very well last time around against Pence, and I had actually considered that she had won that. So
she'd articulate the policy points coherently.
She is very poor in a lot of areas, but she's not 82. And she actually was interviewed by Anderson Cooper, and I don't know if you saw where people were comparing the fact that she handled the Roe v. Wade question much better than Biden could. And again, I know we're lowering the bar quite a bit in light of the two candidates. But if it came down to Biden not stepping down versus having her only, like I'd prefer at least that shakeup. I'd prefer a shakeup of some kind. That's not perfect. It's far from perfect, but it gives us a fighting chance versus what we have now.
Does anybody think he can win right now?
No.
So you got to try something different.
Yeah. Before the debate, Nate Silver had Trump at a 68% chance to win. The reason being is that with Trump's leads in Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona, Biden has to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Has to win all
and
three.
Nebraska's second
That's
electoral
right.
vote.
And he only does that in their models 32% of the time. Going to lose. I don't know how much more people have to say or see, so they stop asking the question, do you think he's going to lose? Yes, he's going to lose. What are we talking about?
There should be somebody on his team who says, look, you can step down and leave with a legacy of having saved the country in 2020, started the transition back to normalcy, setting the ship right, passing the torch on to the next generation, or being known for being extremely stubborn, enabling
taking the party
Trump
down in flames
to retake power.
Brandon, that ship sailed in 2022, didn't it?
No, you got 4 months. You get somebody young, vigorous, who can
Who?
debate.
Who?
There's lots of names we can talk about them, but I'm just saying if they act now,
Gavin Newsom,
you've got
Gretchen
now
Whitmer,
through November.
Westmore, there's plenty.
Get
of
on the
people.
road,
We
tour
ran
50
through
states,
this.
start making the case.
Newsom is down 12 to 15 points in his approval disapproval. Gretchen Whitmer is known to 17% of likely voters.
But
voters.
you can change.
Who are we
that-
talking about?
But you can change that overnight, especially because both of the major candidates right now are upside down with the American people. So, like, approval ratings out the window. If you bring somebody new in versus two candidates that are known and are heavily negative, there's an opportunity.
I agree. It can change. All that polling is based off of Biden still being in there and being a strong candidate, neither of which could be true soon.
No, all of that polling is based on that Trump is a very strong candidate right now. What people won't realize is Biden's historical negatives. He is the least popular president of the modern era.
He is
running for re-election.
But if you step back, both candidates are historically unpopular. We're in a situation where both of them are historically unpopular going back in 50 years of polling. We haven't seen this.
Correct. But the ones that like Trump would dive into a burning building to vote for him.
But there's another 50% of the country that won't vote for Trump no matter
there's
what.
another 50%
there's people
that
like you
won't
who
vote
leave
for
it blank.
Biden.
But so put somebody else in and try.
How?
You can't give up.
How? So you have to have the president and the vice president have to agree to step aside. That's number one. I'm talking about a strategy to win. Can we at least agree on Kamala Harris is not going to win?
I don't agree.
Depending on her VP, if she picks an electric VP, somebody balances her out, she could win. That
No,
could be a
no
winning
president
ticket.
wins the election based on picking a VP.
But again, I think this year is different. I mean, the VP stakes matters for Trump. That's clearly why he's drawing it out. I do think that at the end of the day, when you have a candidate that's universally disliked, and Kamala has high negatives, but from everything I've seen, hers are not as high as Biden's and Trump's. So again, talking on the margins, there's opportunity there.
She dropped out of her home state presidential primary because she was going to finish fourth. For 6 years, I've called Kamala Harris the least talented politician in the United States. I think that still stands. She has no ability to capture a broader market. She'd have to do a complete play to her base. The blue wall is done. Who in Michigan is going to vote for Kamala Harris? I just don't. Sure, we can do that. There is value in getting Joe Biden off the ticket to say, listen, this is not what you saw was not a president, and that's not presidential. And as Democrats, the party that takes governing seriously, we're not going to let this happen under our brand. We're not going to get a Todd Aiken. We're not Republicans. We act differently. There's value to that. You're still going to get your ass kicked.
No, the number one reason why Kamala would have much more of a fighting chance is over and over again for the last 2 years. The number one concern Americans have in polling about Biden is his age.
Sure.
And the fact that they don't think he'll serve a term. If you take that issue off the table, you at least start from a place of being more competitive than you are now, all things considered.
You've got other candidates, right? Let's say Harris can't happen, and there's governors. There's multiple governors that could run for it,
and plenty of capable, competent
and plenty of
governors
capable
who are popular.
And you got 4 months to make a pitch. They can make a decision in a back smoke-filled room, and then have the vote in August. You got to get Biden to agree to give up his.
I'm all for it. You just got to get the entire executive branch to resign. That's all you got to do. You just got to take two people who had the ambition and drive and stubbornness and the weird wiring it takes in a human to get to the two highest positions in the federal government. All you got to do, here's what you do. Kamala, I'll give you the speech. Kamala, we're going to have to ask you to step aside. And it's for the good of the country. And
we're going
to
give you a great ambassadorship to somewhere.
We're going to give you what you need. And Kamala, think of this. Well, you're 50. You got 30 more years to come back. So you got plenty of time. But Kamala, we're going to need some stuff from you. Like the guy who replaces you, we're going to have you introduce him. And then you're going to campaign for him for 4 months. Because the only way this works is you can't give it up and then go stand in the corner and with a sourpuss. That's not going to fly.
Put country first.
What I need you to do, Kamala, here's the pitch. Can you be Nancy Reagan for 4 months? Can you campaign with someone, introduce them, stand behind that person while he speaks with a look on your face, like the words falling out of this man's mouth are from the Almighty himself. That's what I need you to do. And if you can't do that, this plan It ain't going to work.
I don't think I understand the
Ain't gonna
Nancy
work.
Reagan reference.
The Nancy Reagan. Nancy used to stand behind Ronnie and stare at him away when he talked, like he was God's gift.
I see. Okay.
To this. The phrase,
musical notes were coming out of his
my
mouth.
dad used to say is, she looks at him like the sun rises and sets in his ass. And that's what Kamala Harris has to do. Joe gets a pass because he's old. Kamala don't. Do you think she can do that? No. There's no way.
My argument is try. What have
We
you
can try.
got to lose?
Yeah, true.
The election, which you're going
Which
to
we've
lose
already
anyway.
lost. Is there any way? But no, let's not go there yet. Let's talk about coping strategies. I've been on lots of walks, lots of taking advantage of Missouri's liberal marijuana laws to sort some of this stuff out at night. And the only thing I've come up with so far to soothe is I'm taking everybody off my Twitter feed and all podcasts. This is mostly geared at Democrats and liberal media. If some a-hole tells me not to believe my lying eyes about what I saw, and because Joe Biden went to North Carolina the next day and yelled into a mic that everything's fine, that person can fuck straight off. It's time to just jettison all of those people out of the way. That's my first coping strategy.
My other coping strategy is all these people say, a vote for anybody but Trump is a vote for Trump.
Nope.
Screw that. We got ourselves into this situation. Well, I didn't. Freaking Democratic Party got us into this situation.
Yeah.
I'm pissed. I shouldn't have to make a decision between those two. I'll write in Mike McCammon.
It's worth something.
Yeah. Way better than either of them.
Brandon, do you have any coping strategies you're dealing with right now to help with this?
No, just because I haven't been coping well, so I'm still trying to figure that out. But
Coping? What's that?
I'm still in panic mode, and but I do agree it's been frustrating because there's a whole element of Democrats out there who are of the mindset shut up and get in line, and they're still operating under a model that has long passed us but look at Trump, and how come he's not called out on this, and how come there's not the same type of expectations and that framework doesn't apply, and there's an inability.
It does not.
There's an inability to see that there's much more on the line. This isn't just typical politics. If you were like me and you think that our democracy is on the line, and the future of our NATO allies is on the line, like you have to look at this and say, for the Democratic Party, for the good of the country, needs to take action, because this isn't 1992, this isn't 2004, this isn't like any past election where you can say, okay, we'll figure it out, even though this guy is senile and clearly, like, there's much more on the line than that because of the alternative. So there's the aspect of Biden looking like he probably, he won't be able to serve out a full term, but how long he's going to be able to go over the next couple of months. But also the scenario of what Trump wants to do and with his agenda is frightening. And I think that if you really care about the country, and that's what I can't wrap my head around, is the advisors around him who are not looking at it from that standpoint, but are focused on just their jobs or their paychecks at the moment, that's doing us a great disservice.
In the greatest example of the horseshoe theory in my political observation lifetime, Jason, we are right where the Republicans are. The party is being held captive by an unpopular old politician who refuses to get out of the way. And much like the Republicans, what we're learning is we just have to sit here until he's done with us. There's just not a lot we can do.
So I did want to quickly read, because I was really curious to see kind of overseas reactions, and I have a lot of friends overseas. So one of them is from Belgium, a city councilman in Belgium that I met during government work. And so his feedback to me was yesterday at about 5 p.m. because of the delay. He didn't watch it live, but he watched it later. And I think this encapsulates a lot of what Europeans are saying. He told me Donald Trump was terribly strong and confirmed all your bad feelings about him, but he didn't go through the roof, which was the biggest risk for him. But in the assessment of the debate, in air quotes, more of an exchange of statements, Biden's visible age was decisive. The first 10 minutes of the debate were painful to watch. Biden had lost his way. He had no voice, no modulation, no presence. If democracy is at stake, you didn't see the man here who will save America. If life or death decisions have to be made on the fly at 3 a.m, you don't want this man to have to be woken up for that.
If democracy is at stake, where are the Democratic strategists finding a candidate who can beat Trump?
If democracy is at stake, why did you run Joe Biden?
If democracy is at stake, why do we keep holding to the notion that somehow it'll just magically turn around?
That's right. If democracy is at stake, why is nobody actively trying to save it?
And why didn't these discussions happen midway in Biden's first term or earlier? Because, again, we go back to this, Craig. Even though Biden didn't directly say this, a lot of us have voted for him in 2020, did so under the expectation that he would just serve one term, that he was going to make way for the next generation.
You used the term betrayal. And I think that's an emotion that I have towards Biden and Democrats is I thought this was going to be a one and done. I thought this was a transition.
A caretaker presidency.
How powerful could it be
a uniter
to see a man of Biden's age stand up and willingly hand it over, graciously, magnanimously, like a goddamn American? Wouldn't it been great? That's what I thought was going to happen. And it just didn't. And it's not going to. And we're going to watch these two old dudes go at it.
The other elephant in the room is looking at that first 10 minutes. You just mentioned all of our allies and our adversaries. Watching that first 10 minutes, is Biden really in charge? Is he making decisions? Who in the cabinet is making the decisions, and were they democratically elected? Right now, as an adversary somewhere going, this is a good time to do something, and our allies freaked out.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think it's the message it sends is that we're vulnerable. And I hate to echo that because I think the right-wing media has been, hammering that point for a long time. But there's some truth to that, and that the optics last night indicate that our adversaries could very well take advantage and try to formulate tactics to do so of our situation.
I've consistently over the years credited the Democrats with being more aware of brand management and brand awareness, and that when something happens under your brand, it's damaging to the entire party and to the entire brand. We don't do Todd Aiken. We're smarter than that. We know better than that. Well, no, we're not. Because for me, one of the big questions now is how much brand damage are we going to do to ourselves here? How much damage are we still going to be cleaning up in 2028? What happens in 2026 where if Trump wins, I would suspect I don't know, because right now I don't know what our brand stands for at this point.
And if democracy itself is not as much of a main factor, why not just pure politics? Democrats are slated until this happened to regain control of the House and possibly keep control of the Senate, which is remarkable only because they have great incumbents and the Republicans have put up crazy MAGA people in many of these battleground Senate seats. But all of that could easily be lost now, and you could be looking at a situation where you have unified Republican control of all three branches and Trump appointing 3 more justices to the Supreme Court. So if you want to talk about chaos and, do they really want to go down that direction?
How an effective campaign would it be against Trump to say, Biden's stepping down because it wouldn't be right to run?
To take the moral high ground?
We're going to be normal. It's normal to tell the 81-year-old guy you can't have the most complicated job in the United States, because that's what any family would right. do. We're more like you. We're more normal. We don't care about that shit show. They're going to do, we're Dems. We're different. And by that I mean we're better. And we're going to do things better. What really pisses me off, for 25 years I ran around telling everybody Republicans are going to die, Republicans are going to die. It's bullshit. They never did. They are laying on the ground with an open wound with their neck exposed. And the 82-year-old guy just can't lift his foot up to step on it. The end of this iteration of the Republican Party was staring us right in the face up to 48 hours ago. Now it's not. Yeah. Now it's not. They were so to the point that they were at the end. We've just given them a whole new lease on life, and that's all on us. The other thing that's going to be really difficult for me, because I'm the consumer of right-wing media here, is, shit. Everything I've called all these people morons and idiots for, pretty much coming to fruition. Biden was an infirmed old man. That was right all along, apparently.
He actually even looks older than his age. And I think if you actually watch the debate and not just listen to it, the split screen when Trump was talking, Biden constantly had his mouth open and had this look where he was almost paralyzed in the face. Beyond his responses, which were bad, the optics were bad, the way he looked was bad. His makeup people didn't do him a good service at all. No. I mean, it was all around bad. And the people around him should be held accountable for everything on the margins that led up to that point, because it was just political malpractice of the worst kind, beyond Biden's own faults and failings. And the fact that he was allowed to go up on that stage when most of them knew. I mean, they had to know this was a disaster.
I'm older than both of you, so I have a very clear, defined image of what the American president is in my head. Jason's standing up straighter. He's putting his shoulders back. First thing is, it's a man, because for my life, I've always been a man. And there's some strength to the position. You must be able, with your voice and your actions and your presentation, to project strength. There was none of that there for Biden. He does not. This is what I've been on for the last 6 weeks, or the last relaunch of the podcast. This won't get better for Biden because he can't make it better because he doesn't have the physical or mental skills because he's 82 years old.
What is Jill Biden doing in this? She helped
Not
walk
helping.
him off the stage. Why doesn't she want to take him and go, retire and spend some time with the grandkids and sit by the lake and go to the corner store in Delaware and like enjoy their last years of life?
Can I give
together?
you the right wing view of that?
I'm curious. I have heard nothing about her. I saw her up on stage, and I thought she's the one who should be whispering in his ear, "It's time to be done." Joe.
Should be as operative word. Yeah.
Jill Biden, as we all know, did not marry Joe in college, and this wild Senate ride of his was something that they went on together. She married him midlife when he was a senator. I don't know what that means, but there are certain women that are attracted to power and like power. And by all counts, it's Jill the one saying he will run.
Yeah, she's the one who's been adamant that he stay in when other people have advised against it. So that's part of the
Dr. Jill
problem
needs a little closer examination, perhaps, to what is her role here.
She's being compared to Edith Wilson. Anybody who knows the story of President Woodrow Wilson when he was incapacitated? Look this up because, by the way,
She signed shit for him.
She did. Edith Wilson was technically president of the United States. We have had a woman president unelected because he was incapacitated. She was meeting with advisors. She was running policy.
She had cabinet meetings.
Yeah.
I remember reading about that.
It's crazy.
Is that what's happening? Is that what we think? Because as soon as you say that, I'm like, funny, this is a good tie-in, Brandon. Then I'm thinking, well, that has to be happening.
That could be.
right?
We very well could be happening because we didn't find out about Edith Wilson until decades after.
There'll be a tell-all in a few decades.
We've all worked for a CEO or somebody who is running the show somewhere. We've all reported to that person, and we've all cut corners around. You don't need to know that. Just give that to me. I'll take care of that. Don't bother him with that shit. How much of that is being done around Biden? And has it got to the point where now that's hardened into just some sort of other... all of the bullshit the right has been talking for 3 years is all now in play. And you can make a good faith argument now for all of it.
Well, both things can be true. They can be right about a lot of what they said about the left side, but they can also still be running a terrible candidate who should never be there.
And that's exactly true. Yeah. I mean, because still, on its face, I mean, Trump should be nowhere near the Oval Office. And despite Biden's performance yesterday, Trump's performance was not good. He won the debate by default, but on his merits, like that was a horrible performance. That was not anywhere near normal what you would see in a typical debate.
For you, that was a terrible performance. And by the criteria of what makes human communication effective, that was horrible. By any objective criteria, that was a babbling, nonsensical word salad of doo-doo.
But to his base, immigration.
But to those people, they fucking loved it. And I'm going to play the point of Trump surrogate here against you two for a minute. The problem that I think maybe the issue that you guys still have with this is you keep looking at Trump expecting him to make a pitch for you two's vote. That's not what we do. I'm not interested in you two. I don't need you two. In fact, when I take the office without you two, and I did it with just my base, my power is even stronger because I've proved a point. I don't need suburban women. I don't need you fancy college-educated folks. Got here all by myself. That's why his vice president is Vivek Ramaswamy. It's the only piece that makes sense. I'm not taking fucking Rubio. Or you expect me to take one of these mainstream dudes? Why? Because women like them? I'm going to show you. I don't need any of that.
Somebody he can control and echoes everything he says.
And hits the same spot again,
He wants undying loyalty.
and again.
We forget this campaign is all about retribution. This is a retribution presidency. Get back at his critics. He's openly talked about putting people like Liz Cheney in jail. He is going to have somebody at his side who he can trust. He's very well aware of all of the people that he feels betrayed him in the first term, that did not carry out his policy wishes. Exactly. And he's not going to make that mistake again.
And there's one word to describe his VP pick that you did not use, Brandon, and that's MAGA. To the effing core. I want somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy, because that little bastard thinks he can inherit this when I'm done, right? He's just silly enough to think he can step up. Nah, we'll disregard him when we're done. But he's ran for president and supported me while running against me. He win. Come on, guys. This is you're just not using your Trump goggles here.
About that, yeah.
But this is what I think the electorate is struggling with right now. We've never seen a candidate that said, this whole section of the population, not only do I not care about you and I'm not courting you as a political ally, I'm directing my people to hate you. You are the problem. I don't need this. What
Trump openly said he didn't need Nikki Haley
No.
voters. He doesn't want them. I mean,
that's the perfect example. And think about the strength. I won the presidency. I took out two dynasties getting to the presidency, the Bush and the Clintons. We're not even going to talk about what I did after. There's all of that. So then I came back, took control of the party, rewon the nomination, narrowed my base to just my people, and won again. Double, I win.
So do you think he wins because his base has grown or because a bunch of Democrats stay home after what happens?
He's going to win because I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. That's why he's going to win. And I'm not voting for Joe Biden because he's not a viable candidate for presidency. And that's not my fault.
You're with us or you're against us, Craig.
No, that's not how it works. This is a Sith. This is not a Jedi. No, you put up a shitty candidate for the first time in my life. I will not vote. That's on you.
And see, that's where you and I disagree, because I will still vote for Biden just because I feel like it's an existential threat. So I'd vote for, a log on the other side as long as there's a good cabinet behind that log, because the stakes are too great. So
I hear the argument that you're really voting for the people around him more than him, but it also feels undemocratic to me. It hurts philosophically that
it does.
You're voting for a bunch of people that he's picked, not they picked.
That's true, yeah.
I'm protesting a system that has completely ignored me, completely takes me for granted, and has not spoken to me at all. Not one.
I agree.
Not one. Jason, as two dudes, I'm going to say, you're not in your 50s, are you?
Close.
Okay. Let's say two older gentlemen or approaching older gentlemen in the Democratic Party. What's for us here? There's a lot of social issues that don't impact me that I'm for, but they're not really for me. Could you tell me what is the Bidenomics economic philosophy for that? I don't know.
Tax us more.
I got kids coming out of college. I'd like for them to find jobs, maybe have health insurance. I don't know.
Maybe their student debt gets waived.
Well, at some point, that guy sucks is not a presidential candidate.
No, I agree.
It's just not there. And when does the incentive structure change? And who changes the incentive structure?
I don't think it's just 50-year-old white dudes. I think there's a ton of people, moderates, in the middle of the country who are desperate to see an alternative candidate. We just need somebody to present it.
Person would have to be known by 80% of the country. That's
I don't think they have.
You got 4 months. You got to pick somebody.
They don't have to be known when you have two candidates that are so unpopular. I mean, it's people are craving a choice, because any candidate is going to start out not being known by.
Brandon said he would vote for a log if it had the right people on it. So take any other relatively qualified, intellectually high IQ, EQ person, put him on the road, hit all 50 states, you'll vote for him.
Right.
He's better than Trump.
And we're a nation of 300 million people. These people are out there. And so it's not.
I am all for testing the theory. Could anybody beat Trump? And I think there's probably a 52% chance that's probably
There's 340
true.
million people in this country.
It's just
There's somebody else. What
you're talking about is step 3 of this massively complicated plan. I don't see how steps 1 and 2 even get executed to get to step 3.
That's fair.
Because the two people executing them have to be completely selfless, kill off their legacy, and walk away from their careers. Oh, and by the way, generally being seen as losers and dorks and a-holes by the country. It's just not going to happen.
Or the 25th, which is equally complex.
Just give it to Trump. If you're going to pull the 25th, just Trump wins the election by default.
I don't think so. I think there's a greater principle at play. So I think you cement your legacy by stepping down, because
I agree.
If you truly believe democracy is a risk, and you truly believe chaos is on the horizon, and this is
chaos is here.
Well, it's here, but it's going to be even worse. It's going to be full-blown chaos. Then you do the right thing. You explain that to the American people. I think it's much more difficult to not step down and to continue to hammer democracies at stake, but we're going to do this anyway for Biden, because then there's a disconnect there. It's like, okay, that doesn't make sense.
But you've made the whole argument democracy is at stake because that guy sucks, right? That's your whole argument. Democracy's at stake because that guy sucks.
It's because everything he said he's going to do.
You've never made the argument why it's safe under your guy.
Yeah.
And your guy can't make the argument himself.
Reason to vote
even
for
at
him.
the point when the guy is standing 10 feet from him, lying his ass off, he can't make the argument. That's what show me. That's what I'm saying. Where is any path you're talking about leads with Biden leading the way? I have no faith that that's going to happen.
I still think he could. Maybe Obama flies out, talks to Jill Biden, gets her convinced. The two of them go to him. They exit with some grace. He gets a nice page in the history books written to him about how he put country first. He retired. He goes off into the sunset. And I don't care if it's Harris or somebody else. Somebody else swoops in at the last minute, grabs the convention, gives a great speech, unites the other 2/3 of the country that doesn't want Trump.
All for that.
And we're off in November.
Can we get all of the former living presidents to issue like a joint statement saying for the good of the country, we need a change?
And if we had done that November 15th of 2022, we wouldn't be in this spot.
I agree, but it's like planting a tree. Best time to plant a tree was yesterday. Right now, it's today. That's the second best.
What do you want out of this tree you're planting? Do you expect it to grow, provide shade, fruit? Because you're planting a tree that's going to get run over with the lawnmower
for the next 30 years.
Wow, that is a hefty ask. Who are you asking that of?
Got to grow roots right now.
So Jason, what I hear you saying is you want the Democrats to take steps to not only correct the problem now, but start shoring up the problem as we move. Maybe that's how the last third of this. Moving forward, the next 4 months are just going to be an absolute shit show. And does anybody feel confidently they know what's going to happen? I mean, I think Trump's going to win, but that could not happen. And I'd be,
Whether he wins or even if shockingly somehow Biden wins, they got to have a plan for what happens afterwards. Nobody's talking about that. I don't know if there's enough strategists in the party paying attention to that far ahead of time. They darn well should be.
Is it time to start talking about the presidency itself? And I think I posed this question on text to you and Mike Brandon, but why is Trump so scary? Trump's so scary because the power of the presidency is quadrupled, I made that up, in my lifetime. We just keep handing more and more powers to the president.
But
when's it time to say, we're really going to do that?
It's not only so much of what we thought was law to constrain the president's power is actually norms. So it goes back to what we've seen since 2017 especially into 2020 with the election, that we've come to rely on a set of norms and for people to follow those norms. And when they don't, that's when all hell breaks loose. And we've been fortunate that we've had couple people here, a couple people there that were willing to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to carry this out. No, I'm not going to do this. No, I'm not going to seize voting machines. No, I'm not going to, declare martial law in several U.S. cities. But you get yes men and women in those positions, and then those norms are violated. Like we don't have a solid foundation. The Congress has piecemeal tried to address that through like the Electoral Reform Act and some of these practices. For example, like saying no, Mike Pence or the vice president has to certify the vote, like it's not optional. But that's just one piece of this gigantic puzzle where we've relied on norms for hundreds of years because we've never had those tested, and they're tested now, and they will likely be tested in the future. And so long term, we need to look at a series of laws. There was actually a working group back in 2018, I think, they came forward and said, hey, here's where we're vulnerable as a country. And it was Republicans and Democrats. I think Christine Whitman was one of them, and I forget who the Democrat was. And they laid out this whole series of things, like actually backing up the annulments clause with enforcement powers, requiring a presidential candidate to release their tax returns and business records by force of law, like series of things, like separation of powers, things that put limits on the presidential authority. Very few of those have been implemented, but there's a blueprint there.
Well, the reason you're talking about the executive branch having so much more power over the last few decades is because the legislative branch has completely abdicated their responsibility.
They've just given up.
And they've continued to do so.
And, I mean, we don't have time to hit that, but yeah, nothing gets fixed if that doesn't get fixed.
Mitch McConnell's favorite line, we are not here to write laws, gentlemen. We are here to staff the government.
Yeah.
We are not a legislative body. So, moving forward.
It's hard to be positive right now.
The next 4 months feel impossible to predict that of what's going to happen. Because not 100% sure what the players are going to be right now. When CNN, when that ended and CNN just massacred Biden, just the hardest I've ever seen. My initial thought was, well, by Monday morning, there'll be a statement from Biden and this wheel will start turning. And by July 4th, he likes to do things around, big holiday, like the Afghanistan withdrawal around September 11th. That was a great marketing idea. Maybe by that time we're done. That's not happening. That the moment it had to happen immediate. If somebody was going to step in and say, Joe, it's time, it almost had to happen that night or the next day.
He was on stage so fast, though. I think he's going to be hearing from people all weekend long. There's a small chance.
Not only was he on stage,
but there's
he made
a small
3
chance
events.
by your July 4th.
He made 3 events the next day that had to be done, and he ended standing behind Elton John at a gay rights event. That's a man running for president.
But again, that was all too before the New York Times put out this editorial saying it must go. I mean, that's a pretty big step.
Thomas Friedman, who Biden supposedly reads religiously, called on his friend to step down.
Yeah.
He was crying. Van Jones said he wanted to cry on CNN that before. How fast did all of that? Jesus, again.
It's got to soak for a couple days. It was so quick.
We're just sitting here talking about, we saw it.
Yeah.
It was right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Small things that can be done moving forward that can help. One, the Supreme Court killed off the Chevron deference.
Huge
That's
decision.
a whole up thing by itself. But just in general, if you don't like the idea of executive orders, that might be able to help. And it might help Congress, to realize if you don't write it down, it's not part of the law.
Wait, you think that decision was helpful?
It could help in that. Because now the court's going to decide that, not the executive branch.
But the point, in the executive branch, it was agency heads and agency staff that were, writing the instructions for, like the Clean Air Act and for
existing in that gray
power
space.
plant emissions and negotiating drug prices. The problem is now with this decision, that's going to be decided by either Congress or judges, all of the nuance and detail. And do we really think judges are going to have the knowledge to be able to
see what I'm thinking? The judge is going to do a
this?
lot. No, you have to take that back to the legislation.
And we think Congress is going to tackle that. Congress can't do anything. And they don't even have the skills. Look, remember when they were being interviewed about social media? They don't even
but this is the perfect example. The perfect thing for Chevron deference for me is in Obamacare, birth control paid for under Obamacare. That's not part of that law. There's no nothing that says that. That was an agency's interpretation of that law. That's where they exerted their power. How I understand this, the court will say, can you show me where it... No, you can't do that. Are you going to do that? There's no law there. I can't do it either. Go back to the court, rewrite the law if you want it to. That's how I took this, is that's going to be.
But part of it, I mean, that is part of it. And I think that's a legitimate aspect. But it's also just the instructions for carrying out some of these laws. Like Congress, when they pass these laws, none of them include detailed instructions for execution. And so you're going to require Congress now to come up with those instructions, like in the detail. They're not going to do that. They don't have they're not experts in any of these fields.
And the alternatives, we just keep building these massive government agencies that do what? Provide what? This whole thing started because a group of local fishermen in Maine said, basically, there's a person from the fishery agency on every ship. They take count of your fish and all this other bullshit. they got their funding cut, so they told the local fishermen, you have to pay for this person now. Eat shit. I don't have to pay for that. I think that law has the potential. If you don't like government overreach, and if what bothers you in government is say, we'll just make that up. That's filler. We'll just turn that over to a 3-letter organization, and they'll make up rules. I don't like that. I think this could, in some ways, help at least say, should that be written down into a law before we just let agency ABC or executive order 1, 2, 3 solve this for us?
So it comes back to hiring, and I'll use the word hiring, great congressmen, because then they themselves have to be leaders and put people around them who are experts and do the homework, and they have to be selfless and write down what works for.
It's the engine that makes the whole thing move.
To a degree, but I don't think we can expect them to be experts in everything or have staff to be experts in every nuance. There's the issue of burdensome regulations and the bureaucracy that comes with it, which I'm very sympathetic to. But then there's also just the need to be quick and agile, for example, when it comes to like FDA, to ensure that take drugs off the market that are, either poisoning people or things like that, where you want staff to be qualified and who work for those agencies to be quickly rather than relying on Congress to act, because Congress doesn't act quickly and hasn't. And I think you have to have a way to get there. And I think the problem is this is such a broad sweep. It's like wiping the slate clean and then trying to pick up all the pieces after the fact. I would rather see us tackle, give Congress the authority of oversight to tackle on a regulation level, agency by agency, than just saying we're going to scrap it entirely and then have Congress be responsible for everything.
I think the way to tie this into the election is I feel Trump is going to try to expand the powers of the presidency when he gets there. There is no learning curve for this one. Hits the ground running. To your point, he's learned the personnel lessons. He'll correct those as he gets in. It's time to get some shit done that he wants to do. Also, too, by hitting the MAGA button again and again and again and again, now there's going to be demand for these change. This firing 1/3 of the federal government, that's a non-starter for these people. If he chooses Vivek Ramaswamy, if he follows this, I don't need these groups. I'm going to flex my power on you. That extends into the office. My point is we've put all of these different things in place to allow the presidency all of these kind of filler powers where, does it really? There's nobody else. That kind of makes sense. Okay, go ahead and let him. Have we reached the end of that to where, sorry, fellas, that's not sustainable, and we need to take a step back from it?
And again, that requires Congress to push back and then to, implement regulations on the president's authority. So we'll see.
So we spent an hour talking about the presidential election. We should be talking about the congressional elections.
Well, the problem with this is if I'm John Tester, I just watched my chances of getting reelected in Montana just go right down the toilet. If I'm Sheldon Whitehorse in Ohio, this just makes it harder.
Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
because up until this
just
point,
makes everything harder.
All of these red state Democrats have been outpolling Biden in their states. Significantly, and leading in most of these races, partly because the Republicans went for multimillionaires and billionaires to self-fund because they don't have, the RNC doesn't have a lot of money in the NRSC, and these candidates are kind of out of touch or they've been flown into these states. So that's been a boon for the Democrats, but now that's negated by Biden at the top of the ticket with what people saw the other night. So that's the challenge.
Let's end this conversation with this. Jason, what are you looking for as potential red flags or signs of improvement in the next week? What would happen this week that would make you feel better about this whole thing?
Some other Democratic Party elder who professes that there's a plan and they're working on it.
Somebody,
it's not going to be Obama, but maybe some other respected name comes out and says, don't worry, we've got this.
Doesn't that then just feed into your he can't be in charge narrative?
Wait, it does, but that's the fact of it. If it's complete radio silence, to your point, by July 4th, we're hosed.
It feels like you're just going to have to make a decision, Dibs. There's shit that way. It's that way. You're going to have to step in it. You're just going to have to pick.
You're going to have to.
There are no good options.
Pardon the expression,
here.
Man up.
Yeah.
And accept the situation.
Well,
plan your way out of it.
It's feeling like
Start
are we
now.
even going to admit this is a problem? It feels like we're not even going to pass that threshold.
I think they're starting to admit there's a problem. I think that's what we've seen change That's
Who?
what's different from the last 48 hours.
Who is
you just
admitting?
mentioned all those CNN commentators. They're influential, right?
Maybe.
The New York Times editorial board, Thomas Friedman, the
And
people like us,
the
right?
Pod Save America, Crooked Media guys. I
I mean,
they're
even on the
all
ground,
over
though,
this.
you're trying to convince friends and family that there's something wrong.
Have you ever heard of Jack Posobiec? He's the dude in charge of the Pizzagate Clinton problem.
Conspiracy.
He was on Rumble doing live commentary after the debate. You know how many people were listening to him? 15 million. Wow. This is what I'm saying. There's all these other ecosystems out there that this is going to be the only thing they talk about from now until November. Just that debate. The first 10 minutes of that debate alone will feed that machine for the next 4 months.
But it's easy to focus on those the crazy set, the fringe set, the far right, the far left. There's so many people who are in the middle who don't feel that way and are looking for a way out and looking for a way something different. That's what we have to focus on. That is the majority. It's a silent majority right now.
I just don't know if I'm convinced of that. I just don't know. I mean, I thought Trump would be somebody the United States would never tolerate. I never thought for 8 years he would be in the spotlight. He's a fool. He's a buffoon. He's not serious. I never thought we'd be here. I don't know.
Part of that is a failure of our electoral nominating systems, though. I think that just goes to show that that's another area that has to be tackled. The way that we nominate presidential candidates in the two parties.
I agree.
I would love to move to having open primaries across the board, having what they call first past the post jungle primaries. I think that changes the nature, that introduces more moderation. That's... And part of getting rid of caucuses completely, because the states that still have caucuses. I mean, do you know who participates in caucuses? It's people that don't have families, don't have kids, that are usually like retired,
That
party
average of
diehards.
the Iowa caucus is like 1,000.
And
Those
you have to
people
be
are
there
on
for
death's
hours.
door.
You have to
Yeah.
dedicate hours of the day to be there. Like, it's not just slip in, vote, slip out. Like, it's a very small number of people that end up doing it. So again, it goes back to the fact that a very small number of Americans in this country choose our political candidates for us.
You guys have talked before about ranked choice voting. This feels like that would have been a way through this. Because there's plenty of people
Yes.
who had said,
Yep.
well, I don't want to vote for Biden, so I'll vote for
Yeah.
Harris, Newsom, whoever
I'll put
first.
Biden
And if that
third.
person
Yeah.
loses, then I'll
Yeah.
put Biden third
Yeah.
down. And we would have been...
Ranked choice voting could have helped solve this problem.
Because that introduces tactical voting.
Yep.
There's actually strategy behind it
You
versus
just have
not
to teach
having
the
that.
public how to do it.
Brendan, same question. In the next week or so, what could happen that you would say that's a positive sign?
I've seen leaders like Obama, Clinton step up, say there has to be some type of change.
They've already tweeted their support.
It's hard to see what would be a positive. Well, I know that, but I'm still saying things can change. I mean, very quickly. But I've seen some type of change in direction or recognition that there has to be. It's hard to say without a change at the top of the ticket, because I think that ship has sailed. I don't see any way for Biden to restore confidence after what people saw that night, without making him more vulnerable by putting him out there, which you're not going to do. So
Yeah.
there's just not a good way around it. I would like to see somebody working strategically on a way to get him out or counter this. Hear more about tough conversations. If you saw some type of big Democratic fundraisers who threatened to withhold funds from now until the election,
that would be good.
to make a point, that would be good. Money talks.
Yeah. There's a movie that came out in the late 70s, early 80s with Richard Pryor called Brewster's Millions. Have you guys familiar with this film?
I
think I've seen it yet.
remember
Okay.
seeing it. I couldn't
The premise
say
of the
anything
film is rich uncle dies. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but to prove, he wants to teach the Brewster a lesson about money. So before he can inherit the $3 billion, he has to spend like $50 million in 30 days. And there's some rules what he has to do. He can't buy a Picasso and burn it. And the goal is, I'm going to make you so sick of spending money, I'm going to teach you how to manage money when you get the big wad. So he goes through different iterations to spend money, and he finally lands on the best way to blow this money is to run for mayor, is to run for political office.
about it. Oh, jeez.
But if he wins, the rules are, into 30 days, your net worth has to be zero. So he doesn't want to win. That's a job. So he comes up with the idea of it's a none of the above candidate. And he starts the none of the above party. I would feel really, really better about this if in the next couple weeks, some national group, person, entity, whatever, started drafting a none of the above strategy. We're not going to vote for the president this year. We're just not going to do it.
Wasn't that kind of the no labels thing for a while?
No, labels
Well,
is
they're
a
going to
third
find
party.
a candidate, yeah.
This isn't a candidate and a third party. This is a silent protest to send a message to the American political class of where we're at right now. And wouldn't it be great if the president was decided by like 3 million votes? Wouldn't it be great if it was just, we can't do this. We just don't care. That's a pipe dream. It won't happen. But something systemic, something in the current structure of the organization that we can use to send a message for folks. This has to come to an end. If you want us engaged in this process on a mass level, you got to be better than this. It's a simple product question. Your product doesn't meet the market anymore. It's got to get better. I don't know how to send that other than, I don't know, non-participation.
We need no, I think you need to participate. I think you need to write somebody in. Write a name in.
Yeah. That's
because
hard.
it showed you thought about it.
Yeah.
You showed up into the booth.
Just make an X through it or something. I don't know.
There's a whole bunch of other when it lands in a summary somewhere.
Brandon, you got to go to another country last week.
I did.
What kind of transition is that?
Come on, Jason. You've listened to the pod. You know how this works.
All right, land us somewhere positive.
I went to
This is the positive. Brandon got back from vacation.
Yeah,
I went to Ireland and Scotland, and it was beautiful and magnificent, and it was nice to get away from this country and our politics. And I have to say, I am not. I'm still considering going abroad again, probably in October. If I could be out of the country for our entire political season, especially after Labor Day, that would be nice.
I mean, Brandon, we've talked about this before, and we'll have to go out to lunch or something. But if Trump wins, I think I'm done. I can't talk for I can't. What's the point? At this point, Mike and I started doing this because we were confused and just wanted to talk. Nothing's gotten less confusing.
Yeah.
I will say, and I feel like I'm a broken record because I say this every time I'm out of the country, but I constantly encounter Europeans who are very concerned about what's going on here, who are much more informed about our politics and follow it than many Americans I know. Kind of care deeply, more than we do and should probably. And it's also just a reminder that in many of these countries, the UK has a general election coming up and they have their own problems, but they have two very normal candidates running. It's a battle based on policy. It's not an existential crisis like we're facing right now. Neither of their candidates is senile and about to die. Neither of their candidates is, on a retribution tour promising the end of their system. It's very much a policy campaign. And in the UK right now, the Labour candidate, he's been knocked for being a little bit too dull and too policy-minded. And the biggest thing people could say about him is, we're going to elect him because, we want to see change with our economy. But he's not particularly he's not bombastic. He's just kind of dull. And I wish we could have a dull election. I would give anything to have a dull election.
The TikTok videos of people from Ireland calling Farage an asshole are just the funnest things on the internet right now.
And Farage is he's a fringe candidate running from the far right side, very much kind of like a Trumpist candidate, but has no chance. If anything, he's going to take votes away from the Tories. But again, for the most part, it's a relatively normal election. I would give anything to have normal elections again in this country.
I like when the woman broadcaster looks at Farage and says, "So, Nigel, what is it about you that attracts so many racists? Is it what you say? Is it what you do? Is it you personally? But why is everybody around you just a raging racist?"
What's his response?
He'll say, "Well, I've done more to eliminate racism." No, Nigel, that's not what I asked. What is it about you personally? The UK stuff on that, when they get a town hall.
Oh, yeah.
I saw Farage do a town hall in Scotland, and these people are just ripping him.
And the UK,
absolute new one.
That is one thing. The UK media is brutal. They are not deferential to politicians like our media is. They will hound you until you answer the question. They will be relentless. Yeah. They do not give up. They do not
try twice and then give up.
Right. Exactly.
I like when the person says, "Okay, we'll go to the next question," turns to the audience and says, "But we'll all make a mental note that you just didn't answer that." And they just go right to the next one.
I love that.
It is so good.
It's so satisfying.
How do we get just some baseline honesty back into this whole process? There's a young man out of Denver If you've watched any of the Lauren Boebert stuff, he's on a local radio station or a local TV station.
Oh, the one who interviewed her
and
recently?
He's been interviewing
that
and
was
doing.
so good. Did you see this interview?
He did the primary debate, and he just asked very specific questions. If you don't answer it, he says, that didn't answer that at all.
Oh, that's right.
I'll
That was
give
the
you
primary.
one more time if you'd like to. Or if not, we'll just say you didn't answer that and move on.
And this is just a local news affiliate reporter.
Wow.
A master
He's
in reporting.
So
and
good.
interviewing.
Asking people, the hypocrisy of your girlfriend had an abortion, but you voted again. It's just, it seems easy, but we just can't seem to.
Our national
get
media
there.
doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Though. Like that's what we're.
The
missing.
other thing,
Journalism has changed.
the other thing too with this is the official death. It's another official death of the mainstream media. They just gave so much power to Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, and that whack job wing, because now everything they've been saying, well, it's true, right? At least they can make a good faith argument to their. We told you. We were the only section of media that had the insight, the intelligence, and the balls to talk honestly about the president. You didn't get that from CNN. You didn't get it from NBC. You got it from three dudes in a basement slinging it out on Rumble, right?
All right, I want to leave here feeling better. Can we go back to Scotland? What's something cool about Edinburgh?
What's the drunkest you got in Scotland?
Edinburgh it's like stepping onto like a Harry Potter set because it's like the architecture, the stone, the cobblestone streets. Like I love. I mean, it's literally like walking into like a medieval time period.
How are the people?
Oh, people are super friendly. It's very different than like England than if you go to London where there's more of that kind of like standoffish or stiff upper lip mentality. Scottish people are just very casual, open. I was there. There was a big match. Scotland was playing in football. Was playing which country was playing? Slovakia. And so like the pubs were full of people. Like it was like the country was shut down for that like 2 hours that as people were glued to watching that game. So that was kind of fun.
What Scottish word did you hear be like, I got no idea what that is?
Could you understand half
no
of what they
clue.
were saying?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, so many words I could understand. And part of it was just the way they speak
smile.
it fast. Like, yeah. Or I'm
That's
like,
true.
come again?
Scottish
Can I
people
say
seem
that?
to run just one word and it just turns into an entire sentence.
Yes, and they end words on vowels and they just kind of trail off. Other words trail off, and so that's what makes it hard.
So they're Biden Scott. He's Irish, isn't he?
Oh, God.
He's Irish, yeah.
There you go. I've said this on Mike 100 times. It was that trip to Ireland that did it. He got all jacked up over there on whatever. You're the native son of Ireland. And he came back and...
I'm a huge gin fan, though, and Scotland is known for their gin, so they have like entire gin bars and different types of gin, and so that was kind of cool.
I thought they were known for Scotch.
I thought that was
Scotch
whiskey.
as well, yeah. I mean, obviously
Okay.
Scotch,
Gin,
but gin
huh.
is really big there, yeah.
When I think of
One of the biggest
Scotland, I think of a
producers of gin.
big drinking country.
It is,
Okay.
overall, yeah.
Okay. That's good. We're going to Europe in September. We're just planning on just getting eaten and getting
Where are you going in
hammered.
Europe?
France, Spain, Italy. The three
nice.
the
Yeah,
three
the big
big
ones.
touristy spots. So
It's
you
got to
know,
be nice to step out
it's
of this.
going to be
you know?
awesome. It's one
You may
of those
not want to
things
come
again.
back.
Yeah.
Italy
Especially
is
that time.
advertising their population for COVID dropped by over 600,000. There are some villages in Italy that have under 1,000 people that they're offering you basically free housing,
Yeah.
but you have to live for 3 years. You have to fix the house up that you get in, and you have to be within 3 years, and you own it. Because these villages are going to die out,
Yeah.
and they're doing anything to try to preserve those places.
Do they have Google Fiber?
I'm sure you could rig something up. Jason, you're a really smart guy. You could figure some way to get internet.
I wish I were multilingual.
All right, that's our hour plus. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for listening to 2 Men in the Middle. Make sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our website at 2meninthemiddle.com. Drop us an email at 2meninthemiddle@gmail.com or tweet at us at 2 Men in the Middle. We'll see you next week.